Right, so for this lesson, you need to have opened up the Unit 4 Digital Interactive Notebook, and there should be 5 slides there right now. So we're going to go through these first few slides, and it's just a factoring review. We're going to be doing the rationals unit, and pretty much every problem in this unit is going to involve factoring. So we'll talk more about what rational means and what rationals are, that kind of thing, tomorrow when we start working with rationals, but this is kind of like a skill review for factoring, which you learned in Math 1 and Math 2. So the first thing I'd like you to do is in the box there on slide 2, just type in a few reminders. So the first reminder is going to be to always look for a GCF first. And remember, GCF stands for greatest common factor, which means every term would have something in common. Okay. After that, then that's when you're going to start trying to factor whatever's left, if it's a quadratic or anything like that. Try to factor a quadratic, which is just x squared, into 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, and that looks like this. Like, for example, x plus 2, x minus 1. That's what we mean by try to factor what's left into 2 sets of parentheses. Sometimes there is no GCF, and so we're going to start right away with that second step. But you always want to look for a GCF first. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go in order and do a few of these problems. So I'm going to write the first one down, which is x squared minus 6x minus 16. Now we're supposed to look for a GCF first, and I do not see a GCF because the first term, the only number there is 1x squared, and every term does not have an x. So I know there's no GCF. So if it starts with x squared, there's no GCF unless every term has an x in it. This term does not have an x. All right. That means I'm going to go straight to 2 sets of parentheses. And with 2 sets of parentheses, you start with this term times this term need to give me this one back. So the only way to get x squared is x times x. Then remember, these two need to multiply to the last number, which is negative 16. Now the negative part means one of these is plus and one of these is minus. And then the 16, you're just multiplying to see what gets you 16. So some things that give you 16 are 4 times 4, 8 times 2, 16 times 1. Remembering that one will be positive and one will be negative. And we need to add up to negative 6x. So if I subtracted 16 and 1, I'm not going to get negative 6. 8 and 2, if I do 8 minus 2, it gives me positive 6. And if I do 2 minus 8, then it gives me negative 6. So that's my combination. And you can tell which one's going to be negative, again, by making sure you get to a negative 6. The bigger one needs to be negative. If this had been a positive 6, then the 2 would need to be negative. Okay, you just want to make sure your combination here, they do add up to give me this number. So negative 8 and positive 2. And you can check. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. 2 minus 8 is negative 6, so we're good. Those are our factors. So you can go ahead and type that into the first example there. All right, let's go to the next one, which is x squared plus 3x plus 2. Again, no GCF because they don't all have an x in common, and there's no number in front of my x squared. So I'm going to go straight to parentheses. X times x is x squared. The only thing that multiplies to 2 is 2 and 1. I need to multiply to a positive, which means these signs either both need to be positive or both need to be negative. And I'm supposed to add to a positive 3. So I want a positive 2 and a positive 1. So multiplies to 2, adds up to 3. Perfect. So that one's all done. Also remember the order you write the factors does not matter. So on my paper, I wrote x plus 2, x plus 1. I also could have done x plus 1 times x plus 2. It doesn't matter the order. All right, let's do another one. 2x to the third minus 2x squared minus 4x. All right, this one has a GCF. And I know that for a couple reasons. One, they all have an x in common. Now, even though this one has x cubed, this one has x squared, this one only has an x to the first power. So in my GCF, the largest thing they all have in common is just x. I can't pick x squared, I can't pick x to the third. Then I look at my numbers, 2, 2, and 4. So the largest thing that I can divide all of those by is 2. So I can factor a 2x out and not have any decimals or anything. So that's what I'm going to do. And remember, when we factor it out, what we're really doing is we're going to each term and we're dividing by 2x. So 2x to the third divided by 2x is going to be left with x squared. These 2's will cancel. X squared over x is just 1x, and I'm subtracting. Here, the x's will cancel. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Now, the GCF is still there. It didn't go anywhere. So when we write our final answer, 2x is going to be out front, and then we're going to have our parentheses. So the GCF is just on the outside. Now we're ready to do our parentheses. X squared is x times x. This time I'm multiplying to negative 2, which means one of them will be positive and one of them will be negative, but still the only thing that multiplies to 2 is 2 times 1. And I need to add to a negative x. Remember, a negative x is the same thing as negative 1x. So I need these to add to a negative 1, which means the 2 is negative and the 1 is positive. So this is your final answer, and you need to make sure the GCF is there too, that you didn't leave it off after you divided by it. So 2x, x plus 1, and x minus 2. They all need to be there. Okay. All right, let's do slide 4 now. Slide 4 has two problems, p squared minus 36, and then we're going to do 8x squared minus 32. All right, p squared minus 36, there's two ways that you can do this problem. So there's no GCF. You can think of it as skipping a term. So you can think of it as like there being 0 p in the middle. Like they skipped and you're supposed to be adding to 0, right? Because that's what they did. They skipped that term that just has, no squared on the variable. So if you want to do it that way, then you're just going to be doing it like we were. P times p is p squared. And I need to find what multiplies to negative 36, so a positive and a negative, but it needs to add to 0 because that's what the middle is, 0. Well, the only way to add to 0 is if my numbers are the same. So I need two numbers, or one number, that I can multiply by itself and get 36. So that number's 6, right? 6 times 6 is 36. 6 minus 6 is 0. So those are my factors. Now, depending on who's taught you factoring, you may have learned that this isn't a coincidence, that if there's no middle term, if it just looks like this, it's called a difference of perfect squares. And so something that might help you is it's always going to work out that, okay, p times p is p squared. One's a positive, one's a negative, and then the square root of 36 is 6, and that's what goes here. So if you want to think of it that way, it'll work every time as well. Okay. All right, and the last one, there is a GCF. I can divide both terms by 8. So I've got 8, and then I'm left with x squared minus 4. And then I can continue factoring. So 8's still there, and I need 2 sets of parentheses. So one way to think of it, x times x is x squared. We're missing the middle term, so one positive and one negative. And then the square root of 4 is, 2. Another way to think of it, the 8's on the outside because of GCF. And I'm trying to basically factor x squared plus 0x minus 4. So x times x is x squared. Something times something is negative 4, so a positive and a negative. I can get 4 by doing 4 times 1 or 2 times 2. Well, I need to add to 0, so that's going to be 2 and 2. Okay, so either way you want to think of it is fine. So I'm going to go to the problems there, type our answers in real quick. All right, and then don't forget again to type in the 8. All right, so these problems I would like for you to try and then check with my answers. I'll type them in a minute, and that way you can kind of know if you're on the right track with solving them. And then your assignment for factoring is on Delta Math. And here are those 4 problems for you to check. Remember, you can have the factors out of order, but you have to have, so like the first one there, you could have y minus 4 times y plus 9, but you can't have like y plus 4, y minus 9. It matters that the plus is with the 9, right? So the factors can be out of order on any of these, but you can't switch where the positive and the negative are. Okay. All right, and that is it. Your assignment for factoring is on Delta Math.